Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 11th episode of Little More Closer. I am Rafath, and I am a therapist. I work with Pause for Perspective. I do individual therapy as well as facilitate group counseling, and I do a lot of workshops on mental health awareness and other topics. Today, we have with us Ravi. Do you want to introduce yourself a little?
So my name is Ravi. Hi, Rafath, and it's
Hello.
so good to see you after a long time.
Yes.
And my name is Ravi. I'm an occupational therapist by profession. I work with a not-for-profit called Umeed Child Development Center, and I'm also a co-founder of Narrative Practices India. And my work largely involves working with children with disabilities and their families, and children who are at risk of any kind of circumstances which puts their development at risk, and their families. I'm part of the mental health team at Umeed. Uh, and I also a teacher of narrative practices, which is a way of relating or working or associating with people and beings and communities around. And I have a private practice where I work with adults. I work with people from marginalized communities who are experiencing distress, people from the queer community, men who are who use violence to respond in relationships that matter to them, or women who are experiencing distress or violence in their relationship. Um, and I work with communities also, communities like I work with tribal communities to figure out ways for us to respond to what the world is doing to them and their cultures. Um, and communities like schools to create inclusive spaces for everyone in a school space. So this is some of the things that I do. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Ravi. And I think we met in one of your training programs. And um, yeah, so today's topic is called Unmasking Patriarchy. And so why I thought we should be discussing this is as therapists, when we work with individuals, and one of the ideologies that we work with is people are not the problems, but the systems and the world that we live in is the problem. And we constantly keep locating the issues that our clients or the individuals that come to us get us to into the world and into the systems around us.
Hmm.
And a lot
Hmm.
of times we end up saying, oh, it's patriarchal system that's doing this to us, or it's patriarchy that's
Hmm.
doing this to us. And I think we as therapists have become very, like, we use this a lot. But when we say these things, I see a little bit of confusion on people's faces. They're like, what? No, how is this patriarchal? This is like this guy fighting with me, that's it. Or, I'm having an argument with someone, that's it. But it's so much more than that. It's so layered. Mental health is so intersectional and political. And
Yeah.
what we end up seeing is the individual and the problems that they bring only. But it has so many layers. And one of the intention of having this conversation with you was to just explore and understand what we mean when we say that this is a political issue, or this is a patriarchal issue, or patriarchy is doing this to us. And if I had to ask you, Ravi, about, if you had to define the word patriarchy, if you had to say what it means
Hmm.
in the simplest
Hmm.
of terms for me to
Hmm.
understand it, what would that be?
Hmm. I feel that I remember the conversations we have had, before about patriarchy and toxic masculinity, particularly. Um, I also want to say, as I'm sharing today, I'm not an expert on patriarchy, and it's the wisdom that I have gathered from reading, working with people, and my own reflections. But also want to acknowledge that there are so many people that have walked before us
Mm-hmm.
to help us gather this wisdom. So, wanting to acknowledge that I'm not an expert, and it's more of the sharing will come from the other people who have done this, and to explain the question of what is patriarchy in the most simplest term, I've read this document called Planting Seeds, Flying Kites, which was made by a group of women in Mexico who were responding to violence that was gendered violence that was happening in their community to them. And when they came together in circles to discuss about how do they respond to this violence, and they tried to explain what's patriarchy all about. And it's one of the most simplest definitions or ideas I've heard of, patriarchy. They said that uh, patriarchy is like the game of football, you know, where certain people are treated like footballs
Mm.
and certain people are footballers, where footballers are kicking the football without the football's permission, and but the football is the central part of the game. You cannot play football without the football. So and they said that when you play a game like that, where somebody is a kicker and somebody is being kicked, that's patriarchy,
Mm.
right? So they said we should stop playing games like these. In fact, they went on to say that, oh, we want to be the footballers. We want to kick the football.
Some technical glitch, but that's okay. I managed.
Yeah. So, and then they said, we want to be footballers. Then they said, wait, actually, we don't want to be footballers. We should stop playing games like that completely, where somebody is being kicked and somebody is a kicker. And I feel that's the simplest way of defining patriarchy, where there is somebody in a position of power and
Mm.
somebody is not, and they're using that power to control somebody. Um, is what patriarchy looks like to me.
Yeah,
And in very simplest way, it's even saying, laughing at somebody just because they're speaking differently or their English sounds different.
mm.
That's patriarchy in an everyday
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Or looking at somebody just because they're looking different and passing a comment in your head, or that looks weird, that's not beautiful. That's patriarchy, because you're exerting the power you have
yeah.
um, on somebody else's experience and passing a judgment of how they should be.
Correct.
um, and it's patriarchy in everyday
Yeah.
thing.
It's very interesting what you just said, Ravi, because when I asked you this question, I thought, the answer would be something around, oh, a man's world and, men doing this, men doing that. But it's so simple. It's just simple as someone, misusing the power that they have, or making others feel like they should be a certain way, do certain things in a certain way. And so whenever I have these conversations with people who are not so, who do not use the word patriarchy as much, and these are sometimes men, I see a fear on their faces, like they
Yeah.
feel attacked. They feel like they have to defend themselves when I say, oh, so if suppose I'm driving and I get looks from people just because I'm a woman, I'm driving, and I'll roll my eyes and say, oh, this is patriarchal. And people are like, he's just looking. That's it. It's not patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as you just said, like if someone's looking at you in a judgmental way and even saying things or doing things that um, are oppressing in a way that kind
Yeah.
of makes me feel like I should not be doing these things in this way. That's
Yeah.
patriarchal enough. And so are we blaming anybody here? Are we saying that this you know this particular group of people are doing this,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
uh, this particular gender is doing it, or is it that
Hmm.
everyone's doing it? What is it like?
Um, it's a complicated one. I don't believe in the idea of blame. And I have read many people who call out blaming and shaming as one of the tactics of patriarchy. Right.
Oh,
The moment we are blaming each other and shaming each other, um, we are doing the same exact thing that patriarchy has taught us for years together, to blame women for
yeah,
everything that goes wrong in a child, for blame mothers that everything goes wrong in a child's life, or blame women
Mm,
for everything that goes wrong in the community. Like in Helaro, this movie, I was saying that because rain was not happening in the village, apparently the blame was because women were dancing garba. So it's like the blame had to shift on somebody for
mm,
patriarchy to continue to be invisible, right?
yeah.
So one of the biggest tricks of patriarchy is to continue to be invisible in everyday life. Uh, so I wouldn't blame anybody, but or shame anybody, but that there is accountability,
Mm-hmm.
and those in positions of power are accountable um, to patriarchy, and that is mostly like men, because men have more position of power that they get knowingly, unknowingly, just by being identified as men, because patriarchy exists to support those in power, and that is usually men.
Yeah. You just use the word invisible, and I think that's very true because these things are so invisible. You can't see them, even though I am able to now see it. Uh, I still, like how you just said, blaming is a tactic used by patriarchy. Then, I mean, I did not know that. That was so invisible for me. So,
Mm.
what? Why do you think it is invisible, or what makes it invisible? And is there a way that we can make it invisible, like visible, out in the open?
We can make it visible, but first I'll go, why is it invisible? It's invisible because any system of oppression can work its best or can exist for so many centuries on this planet because it's continued to be invisible, right? It is impossible for a system of oppression to exist for so many centuries um, without being, like, even today when you call out, it's like people say, oh, there is no patriarchy, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So which means it's so invisible and so
yeah,
internalized an everyday language in us. uh, and it is also like, so like one of the things, practices of gender identification at birth, right?
mm-hmm.
Gender as binary
Mm,
is patriarchal,
yeah,
because patriarchy can continue to exist if gender is divided into binary roles, right? um, uh, Sexuality, like just being one way of heterosexuality, is patriarchy.
yeah.
Patriarchy hates multiplicity or
Oh,
plurality of identity, right? It wouldn't like if people had many genders, because if more genders, the role gets more messed up. There is no clear definition of who is in position of
mm,
power anymore.
mm,
uh, but it has found newer ways to do this. Capitalism and patriarchy go hand in hand,
yeah,
right? Anything capitalist is patriarchal, and if somebody tries to deny it, it's just because that they cannot see it, because patriarchy has cloaked themselves in it. How do we make it visible? I feel a dear friend, Prathama, who's also a mental health professional, and her dear friend, Nayantara Gurang from Nepal, who is a documentary photographer, they came together 2 years back and started something called as Imperfect Solidarity. And why imperfect solidarity stands out to me always in my conversations is how they brought a group of people together and tried to create this room where there is no shame, no blame, but we will all talk about things that are hard to talk about, like patriarchy, toxic masculinity, in a way that we try to create a space of imperfect solidarity, because none of us can be perfect in the way that it is dangerous to say that I'm non-patriarchal, or I
mm,
will come to that point in my life where I will have no patriarchy. It is almost impossible to imagine. It is
yeah,
dangerous to imagine that.
yeah,
But how do I become aware and then hold myself accountable and others accountable?
mm,
And that's very different from blaming and shaming.
mm,
How
yeah,
do we do that with kindness and calmness and patience? Is
yeah,
the
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
I, solidarity, I think, is what you said, and that's standing out for me. And also to hold that. solidarity without blame, without shame. Seems like a very warm, nice place where I can just be, but it's too ideal, or it's too. I mean, I don't know. We as humans have the capacity to do that. I mean, as you said, it's so internalized. We always end up blaming or shaming, and there is this aspect of shame that always comes up. And when you do something wrong, you end up beating yourself up. And if someone else is in that place, you end up beating that person up. And what do you have to say about shame as a, because I think this is what continues and allows patriarchy to have power. Because I think we as humans always end up, getting into these spaces of shame or blaming. And yeah, and but I think
Yeah.
you mentioned how accountability and being aware is something that we can.
Yeah.
This brings me to the next question, Ravi, about how you said when it starts becoming visible. Um, I think when it started becoming visible to me personally, I had a lot of frustration and anger towards these systems. And whenever I used to see these things around me in my daily life, 500 million, messages coming to me from the world about how I should be, what I should do. Is that is this is what I should not be doing. And as you said, a lot of these are patriarchal. I ended up feeling a lot of frustration, and I'm like, oh, okay, what now? How do I break this system? How do I come out of it? So what's your way of, dealing with the frustration that comes with the visibility of this system? How do you
Mm.
manage, or what would you, do to not feel
Uh,
so frustrated?
yeah. Um, I think that frustration when you're responding to patriarchy or when it's happening to you, or when you're aware of it, and that feeling of anger and frustration is a very common experience that has been happening for many years for many people. And if you're not frustrated and angry about patriarchy, then it's a worrisome thing, because that means you're completely invisibilized from it because you're getting privileged by it in some ways, right?
Mm.
So, as men who are reflecting on patriarchy, when men get frustrated about how they're continuing to be patriarchal even after being aware, like trying to be aware, or when women, like you're saying about how you are experiencing patriarchy, the frustration. I think to look at it much in a complex way. One is to look at this frustration from a space of what is so important for you in your life that is getting violated in some ways. That your
Mm.
expression of that violation is frustration. Right?
Yeah.
And I feel that that somewhere starts telling us stories about what's important for you and your view of the world, that we want to protect and hold on
Yeah.
to, right? That we
Yeah.
can talk about for myself or yourself. So I really get into this space about what is this frustration all about, you
Yeah.
know, like what is so important for you in life that seems to get violated in some ways or transgressed in some ways. And the other question that I often, which is continue to hold on to this frustration and anger, because this frustration and anger also guides the work that we do, um, because it allows us to continue to persist, this idea of persistence that we all have, of resilience to know that this system that has existed for centuries together and so powerful, but all of us in our own ways continue to persist and respond to it and find and navigate our ways through it. uh, like women
Also maybe
breathing.
resist, with
Yeah.
the, yeah, you were saying something, sorry.
And no, you're saying.
No, that's it. I was just saying that when I said frustration, I was like, I don't want to have this negative emotion, or I don't want to feel frustration and anger towards this. I'm losing my mental peace and all of those things. But the way you put it about how this frustration might be indicating what's important for me, and how am I then going to respond to it, and how what I loved about what you said, Ravi, was maybe holding on to this frustration and not asking it to go away, and holding on to it so that I am able to act from that place and do what is important for me. I think that just stood out in what you
Yeah.
said. Yeah. Is there more that
And
you were
it's
saying?
also,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's also this feeling, right, that am I doing enough or am I not doing anything to respond to what's happening. But to exist in a patriarchal world and to breathe in a patriarchal world is resistance enough to start with, right? As queer people continue to exist in this world, as women continue to exist in this world, as trans people continue to exist in this world, as little children continue to exist in this world and continue to imagine and play the way they want to sometimes. These are all acts of resistance, right?
Yeah.
Breathing is an
Yeah.
act of resistance. And I feel to start from a place that this is enough for us
Mm,
to exist is enough. And that this whole idea that we have to do something big and out of the blue and fight
mm,
this and go heads on, I'm not saying that's not wrong, or that's not expected, but it shouldn't be expected from everybody. You know, I think the pressure of that can be frustrating sometimes too.
yeah.
So there's another complex question I ask myself, which has been really helpful: that who benefits if I am frustrated and angry and feel hopeless all the time? Obviously, as a system of oppression benefits from it, because it wants me to feel hopeless so
Yeah.
that I stop feeling, because I feel that this is so massive. How am I supposed to fight?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I notice that I'm just breathing, and that breathing is an act of resistance, and if I do my everyday things that I'm doing, is resistance enough?
Yeah.
So
What you just said makes me feel I'm doing a lot now. Because if just breathing is just enough, then yeah, I think people fail to see this, fail to see that how they are resisting in so many little ways that, uh, yeah, I just loved what you said about, for a lot of us, even surviving in this hopelessness is resistance in itself. Um, I think we're at the end of the conversation, Ravi, and the last thing that I wanted to ask was, how was it to talk about this today? And uh, yeah, oh no, wait. The last thing was actually, if we had to, are we then saying that we want to remove this completely, or we want to replace it with something better, as a system of patriarchy? Or yeah, so what are we saying with this conversation then? That
mm,
निकाल के फेंक दें इसको या फिर what do we do?
yeah. I imagine a world that where patriarchy doesn't exist, but I don't know about it. Um, but there is a hope that there is collective accountability, and we develop practices of accountability where we help each other in understanding this. Like my work,
Mhm.
because revolves a lot around children. I work a lot with them to create spaces with their families to start looking at patriarchy and anti-patriarchal stances that they can choose to have. Like when they ask questions or when they're curious about the world, how do we respond in a way that we are not recruiting them into patriarchy, because we're doing that to each other in knowing and unknowing ways. When children ask, why am I wearing this, and why when a boy will ask that, why am I wearing a t-shirt, I want to wear a frock. How do you respond to a situation like that? Because those are the moments where recruitment into patriarchy starts happening, and these are complex conversations. They are not easy answers to this. um, and I feel that there has been a lack of spaces for having complex conversation, right? There is now a constant fear, like whether I will say the right thing or the wrong thing, and
Mm,
will people shame me for saying the wrong thing? And there is no space for people to be wrong anymore, and I worry about that, right? How are we going to learn about things if we don't acknowledge um, this space where we are allowed to be wrong, but we are holding each other accountable? So I don't know how the world would look like what I would like to do with patriarchy, but I would really want us to be, well, in the sense for me to be anti-patriarchal, and hope for a world where we are all accountable to each other, and we see each other in a relational way and not as individuals who are functioning independently. It's like this how the rhizomes, this like this metaphor that I've been reading a lot about, how rhizomes or a rainforest grow. In a rainforest, every being is accountable to the other being, right? And that absence of one being affects the entire system of the forest.
Yeah.
So, how do we create these practices of accountability within the communities we live in? Um, so I don't know about what will happen to patriarchy, but I surely know that if we build a space of collective accountability through kindness, there is a space of hope for us to figure out this.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you're not saying let's smash this and take it out, but you're just saying let's create spaces, which are which are of an anti-patriarchal stance, which allows people to be, which allows people to make mistakes and not be afraid of being ashamed or uh, being blamed. And I think that's beautiful because then our, I think, focus shifts from breaking something to creating something, and maybe this something that we are creating might just take over the entirety. That's the hope, at least. So yeah, thank you so much, Ravi, for having this conversation with me. To be very honest, what I feel in my body is a lot of warmth and some opening up. I just feel very happy after having this conversation. It feels like there's hope, there's just, yeah, I just feel good. And I want to ask you, how has this been for you to come here and talk about this early in the morning?
Thank you, Rafath. Thank you for thinking of me. And I feel that uh, it's it's a warm feeling again to have a conversation with you, and because we've had these conversations before, and just to feel that we're both discovering this together. And I feel this is what the practice of accountability looks like, exactly
Mm,
this, where we are having a conversation and sharing and our own understandings, because it's so different and coming from our own space. Like, both of us didn't feel that we are going to blame or shame each other for what is being said here.
yeah,
So I think that feeling of for me to reflect on what I'm saying, right? I can point out 3 4 things I've said, and I'm like, what did you say? And but to be able to do that,
yeah,
to question, continue to question, is an important. To continue to listen and be curious is important, and I feel I enjoy that. To do that, it's helpful. But thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ravi, again. And thank you to all the people who saw this till the end. If you have any other topics that you would want us to discuss, you can let us know in the comments. And you can also share what you thought about our conversation with us. And thank you for, watching, guys. Bye bye. Bye, Ravi.
Bye bye.